This meeting is being recorded, of course. So let's not make you wait any longer. So bonjour tout le monde and welcome to the third and final day of PowerSkills, The Courage Strikes Back. It's hosted by the Career Advising and Transition Services of McGill School of Continuing Studies. In case you don't already know by now, this next level virtual career summit is here to help you gain the most important soft skills, learn industry-specific guidance, and give you all you need to thrive in today's reality. Now, my name is Nayo Garyepi, and I'm a career advisor from the CATS team, currently in Montreal, and I would love to know where you're all joining us from, like I said, in the chat. And I have also my wonderful colleague here with me, Valerie Anduini. If you want to say hi.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you.
She's an amazing career advisor, and she will be helping me with the chat and everything happening in the back end. So thank you very much for all your help. Now, there's a few things to know. So of course, please write any questions you have in the chat. This session, like I said, is being recorded and will be shared with you at the end. If there's any also resources, we'll share them with you at the end. Now let's introduce our amazing speaker today, Dr. Stanzi Lobel, who was trained as a classical cellist at the Juilliard Pre-College. She received her BA from the Northwestern University and PhD from the University at Buffalo. She is Fulbright Scholar and founder of the Indeterminacy Festival and Indeterminacy Consulting Group. She currently serves as an academic advisor at McGill University's Building 21. In this role, she trains students how to thrive within uncertainty. Practicing indeterminacy is a method that teaches individuals to improvise new solutions to complex problems. So hey, give a nice and warm welcome for Stanzi.
Hi, it's great. It's great to be here with all of you. And I'm really excited to be here at PowerSkills. It's been such an impressive lineup of speakers and topics to carry us into 2021 and beyond. And I want to thank Continuing Studies for inviting me to speak with all of you on this Saturday afternoon as this whole wonderful, complex group of ideas is coming to a close. So, right, as mentioned, the subject of my talk today is the Indeterminacy Method. This method was developed over the course of 7 years during my PhD and as the director and co-producer of the Indeterminacy Festival. The festival brought together over 100 collaborators from a wide range of backgrounds and expertise. These were year-long initiatives which trained individuals in contingency planning. I coached participants to take their expertise and think on their feet in unpredictable situations. Since completing the PhD in July 2020, I founded the Indeterminacy Consulting Group, which is currently focused on creative leadership training. Now in its second year, the program introduces participants to a wide range of special guests from across countries, disciplines, and organizational practices. In this talk, I will speak to the underlying philosophy that guides this program and the method I have been developing over these past 7 years. Afterwards, I'm more than happy to open the floor to questions and conversation, and I really do look forward to hearing from you. There will be no slides for this talk, so you are more than welcome to close your eyes or look away from your screens to listen, whichever you prefer. But this part will really be about you envisioning these ideas in your mind. And then after, I really do invite you to then, join us with your cameras on and enter into a I hope will be a great conversation. So indeterminacy is a big word. It's a mouthful. So what do I mean by it? I am going to be telling you how I am using it here. Indeterminacy is more than just deciding which flavor of coffee to buy at the grocery store. Yes, indeterminacy is undetermined, but it is not random. The Indeterminacy Method is about opening yourself up to a wider set of choices to make a decision. It is about expanding the agency you have and the autonomy you exert over your actions. In the same way that grandmasters train for unpredictable moves on the chessboard, or a firefighter makes decisions on the fly in an uncertain and dangerous environment, these methods train you to make better informed choices when faced with an uncertain situation. Like the firefighter or grandmaster, you have to practice in order to improvise successful solutions on the fly. This is about adventurous thinking. Adventurous thinkers are the people who went to the ends of the world. They are the lamp bearers, the Magellans. We want to aspire to think like Magellan. We're not all going to have perfect apartments or perfect lifestyles, but we can try to emulate that ideal. I think a lot of us neglect this aspirational sense of self when it comes to cultivating our minds. So question, how do we become aspirational thinkers? The answer is conditioning. We condition our bodies. We go to the gym, we run, we swim, we play tennis, we use lotion, we apply facial masks. We condition our emotions. We go to therapy. So why are we not conditioning our minds? As we know in the physical and emotional domains, conditioning works best through a sustained and regular practice. The Indeterminacy Method is about a sustained practice of conditioning your mind. It is for those who are ready to exercise their ability to be aspirational in daily life. Whatever problem you're trying to solve, personal or professional, this method conditions you to make decisions from a position of strength and integrity. So you might be thinking, well, great, but how do you do this? How does this happen? So I do it by drilling down into specific disciplines and techniques. I do it by really getting into the details, by extracting valuable thought strategies from across a variety of fields and then applying them to our common human experiences. I have researched, studied, and practiced the Indeterminacy Method for 7 years in a variety of roles as a PhD student, college professor, Fulbright scholar, festival director, and advisor. So I know it has depth and impact. After all of these years, I'm only further determined, inspired, and excited to be sharing this methodology with you, given the global situation in which we all find ourselves at present. This method has more relevance now than ever because the fact is the nature of work is changing. All of us should become indeterminacy practitioners, grandmasters of our own lives. I'm sure most of you are working or learning remotely right now with more emphasis on self-direction and less emphasis on the immediate feedback of your managers, bosses, professors, and colleagues. I'm sure many of you have felt alienated, struggling to create balance in this new normal, but that is the trend. More and more, we will operate in a dispersed environment. With our technology, it is no longer necessary to be together in physical space in order to collaborate or be productive. The very fabric of our social and professional worlds is stretching. And the reality is that we're not clustered together anymore. Through the Indeterminacy Method, my objective is to get you each to a place where your performance can be excellent, interconnected, and sensitive to these dynamics, even though you can't cultivate these relationships at the proverbial water cooler. So what will you do differently? Learning to thrive in this foreign territory is critical to your success. I offer the techniques necessary to change with this trend successfully. This is not an external tool to fix the problem, but a method that becomes part of how you operate within these new structures. As a practitioner of the Indeterminacy Method, you are empowered to reach a place of mental preparedness. Consider indeterminacy practice as your multivitamin to keep your mind healthy as you navigate this new professional landscape. Imagine someone has just blindfolded you. With your vision taken away, you feel, taste, and smell to gather information on what's going on. The Indeterminacy Method places a blindfold over your immediate reflexes so you can become aware of your knee-jerk responses to a given situation. With your reflexes blindfolded, you can begin to build a repertoire of alternative responses. Through practice, you will get to decide, what if I up the innovation and lower the fear. You will be able to change the ratios and rethink the recipe of your life. The method is structured around introducing you to a diversity of individuals and scenarios that are disorienting, that are unfamiliar. We drill down into a specific niche to examine what is going on within that framework, but we don't stay there. We zoom in and out. We cross-train for your goals. Instead of focusing on the minutia of your particular situation, here you're opened up to the variety of other options and approaches so you can be empowered to choose. Remember the grandmaster, the firefighter. Remember that this is about preparedness, empowerment, and the serenity to decide how you want to react in unpredictable circumstances. I don't know what your goals are. Maybe you're trying to come across authentically and confidently in an interview on Zoom, or you're struggling to convey a specific presence or authority in your virtual meetings. To help you with this, I'd like to introduce you to vocal coach Kathy Kennedy. Kathy will help us become a more powerful communicator. So let's listen in.
If you think about the voice as projecting something outside of you, maybe like a pitcher in baseball throwing a ball, what really affects the outcome of the ball is the wind-up, the getting of energy before it. And so being able to take a deep breath before you speak is everything. And it's not as easy as it sounds. As soon as you start to think about it, your diaphragm begins to be tense and your reflexes are not able to react as quickly as they should. So you need to think away from that. You need to think about the pleasure of exhaling and exhaling to the absolute end of your capacity of breath. And when there's no more breath left inside of you, then you're going to inhale for real, because you really need to inhale to get to stay alive. And that's how to find a really deep breath.
What is really interesting is that we're taking this field, this lens, this framework for considering the voice in something as simple as breath. And just by thinking about it, we can extract it like a serum, and you can apply it to your own circumstances. Right now, you might be navigating an inflection point in your career, worrying about your upcoming interviews, or maybe you're just facing the everyday challenges of building collaboration and partnerships with your colleagues, friends, and family. The voice is such an integral part of this. So here we zoom in on this very granular information, which can have immediate impacts on your communication, expectations, and awareness of how to vocally comport yourself within these virtual spaces. So you see what I'm doing here. I am demonstrating how to become empowered through diving deep into the specifics and then re-emerging to see how these specifics are applicable to you. Now, next, let's meet Dr. Samuel Veissière, Assistant Professor of Psychiatry and Co-Director of the Culture, Mind, and Brain Program at McGill University. He will first introduce us to the familiar concept of resilience, but quickly he will move to the less familiar concept of anti-fragility.
But you may not know this, the word resilience, like the word stress, is actually a metaphor borrowed from the material sciences, like say engineering, to describe the properties of a material that bends back into its original shape after encountering a stressor. So by a stressor, I don't necessarily mean something bad, but I mean new bits of noise and unexpected information in the system that are typically registered as, oh, what's going on here? So even in information theoretic terms, even surprise or surprisal could be another term for stressor. But adversity also could be one, and we're going to get there. So anti-fragility, it takes this construct, this metaphor a bit farther, and kind of like when we talk about post-traumatic growth, it describes the strategies of a system or organisms that grow and thrive and flourish when they encounter stress, disorder, and danger. The question, of course, will be, well, is the human species anti-fragile? If so, how, where, in what domain? And there's lots of interesting ways of looking at it, and hopefully you'll find this really interesting.
Dr. Veissière goes on to offer examples such as the fragility of an orchid versus the robustness of a tree in comparison with the agility of the nimble reed. We are invited to reflect on the differences between fragile and anti-fragile strategies in our own lives and work. I am sure you have all encountered a situation where a colleague, friend, or boss angrily confronts you about a problem. They're upset, frustrated, and directing that frustration at you. In moments like these, it's natural to become defensive, bristle up, and react. It would be easy, in other words, to become stoic like the tree or fragile like the orchid. But now we have a third response in the nimbleness of the reed. Thinking through these examples begins to condition our responses, opening us up to alternatives, pathways, and possibilities to be prepared, empowered, and serene in the face of the unexpected. What I love about what I do is that it really can draw from all disciplines and aspects of life, and we can bring in artists or academics or well-established organizers, and all of them can feed us and expand our repertoire. Now let's meet vocalist and composer, Dr. Esin Gündüz.
So what do we focus on as types of energy? For instance, the sensation of vertigo, looking down from a very high balcony, or what we call lift-induced drag, the feeling that we have when a plane takes off, the sensation of going back but being pulled forward at the same time and you cannot tell which. We just happen to know these sensations in our bodies as human beings. So sense of energy depends on such common ground elements in order to encourage everyone to make sounds, to discover sounds in relation to those elements and improvise with them.
Esin shows us how we can take an energy, whether it is vertigo or the lift off in an airplane, and channel these feelings into a sonic form. We learn to transform difficult or uncomfortable sensations into sound. And this practice allows us to grapple with otherwise incomprehensible experiences and sensations. As we travel into these unique and specific universes, we discover tremendous intelligence that can equip us with and open ourselves to alternative thinking, alternative strategies, alternative outcomes in our own lives. The Indeterminacy Method is a means of connecting diverse streams of intelligence that you, in all likelihood, would consider unconnectable or irrelevant to one another. Next, I'd like to introduce you to movement coach Alana Kreveld. Alana understands how to create balance and stability through a practice of instability.
A wooden dowel, maybe like an inch in diameter, like 2.5 feet long. I have one in either hand. I'm kind of holding them lightly, so they're not stable. I'm not gripping onto them. They're kind of lightly moving, almost like if you were a drummer. This is what I'm understanding about holding the drumsticks that they have. You want them to be some movement. It's not like a super firm grip. So that instability is creating an opportunity for me to be sensitive about how they're moving. So I impose something, but I don't impose so much that I'm only willing the dowel to move in a certain way. So they're vertically kind of balancing, and I'm like, and I'm moving around. So I have to make all these subtle little shifts or whatever so that the dowel kind of stays more or less vertical. And then, and then slowly I'm kind of moving in space, and it's like this kind of little wiggle, noodle kind of dance, trying to observe how these things move. And it's like this little conversation gets created. The dowel kind of tilts a little bit, and I kind of recenter so that it's more kind of in the middle of my body, or so that we're sharing something of our axis is more or less the same. This is the adjustments that I'm making are basically doing this. And as we go, then other questions start to emerge. So there's like this conversational thing happening. This unstable thing is moving. I'm moving to kind of keep our axes like more or less aligned. And and slowly I start to make other choices. So I let it tip a little bit more, and maybe I let that dynamize something of where I go. Maybe I let it tip a little bit more towards me, and then I kind of duck away. And then we return to this kind of neutral shared axis thing, or shared axis. I guess just one axis, or maybe it's three. I don't know. I have two dells. I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm able to kind of play and flex a little bit and ask questions in the moment, because this thing is, because of the instability, basically has some kind of dynamic that feels really alive. So even though I'm dealing with an inanimate object, there was a lot for me to discover about how we can move together.
Here, Alana describes a movement practice that literally immerses her in a state of precarity. Through this technique, Alana conditions herself to react with more agility and ease to the instability of her situation. She intentionally practices being off balance, and the more she practices, the more choices and possibilities open up for how she might respond in a given scenario. In this method, we are playing to be professionalized. Alana demonstrates how this play allows us to successfully navigate unexpected situations, the unimaginable. What we're really doing here is an organized form of play with outcomes that are directly useful in the real world, helping us feel less daunted when we walk into the proverbial burning house or see the unfamiliar chess move we couldn't imagine. Preparedness is the closest we are going to get to control, serenity in the face of chaos. You'll be asked to do things that are increasingly complex and uncharted in our new professional landscape. If you train in other unknowables, in other fields that you are not already astute in, the possibilities are endless. This is what conditioning your mind to respond to a complete in an informed manner to the situation at hand. Let's hear from Alana again as she describes this experience in her own practice when playing at the ping pong table.
So I went there and I had a lesson with the guy who ran the space, and he said this thing to me. He was like, "Okay, you're doing good." He's like, "But when the ball comes to you, you need to have the ping pong ball stay longer with your paddle." Like, in other words, that there was like this, that I was sending the ball too quickly. So I needed those things to stay connected a little bit longer before I let it leave the paddle. And that, to me, like, that blew my mind. Like, that cue blew my mind, because I would do it, or I would try it, or whatever. And it was just like, yeah, I don't know, like the nuance of that. And then, like, to see kind of what impact it had, like, immediately in the space of play of like the ping pong table was, yeah, blew my mind.
So obviously on this webinar, we can't actually do an interactive movement or vocal session, but in this method, these would be the components. We would have a designated moment to actually explore in movement or in voice and see what that says about our instincts and the path we would take to developing new instincts. There is obviously a whole host of knowledge from other fields of study that I'm not able to detail here, but what's so exciting is that I'm pulling from all of them. And there is so many amazing interdisciplinary connections to make. In my Indeterminacy Method practice, we talk to doctors, architects, scientists, dream researchers, movement specialists, composers, and vocal coaches, entrepreneurs, philosophers. All of these people have wisdom to confer if we examine their strengths in the right way. All of it is applicable to us. And this methodology, this conditioning, will prepare us in ways that schooling and social codes cannot. This is a whole different level of training. I do this work because it's amazing and it has so much potential. It changes the culture in which you operate. It changes the nature of what is possible. One of the students who recently participated in the creative leadership program I run had a really great way of encapsulating his experience with this methodology. He said it gave him a more plastic, resilient, and less fearful impression of the world? Who doesn't want a more plastic, resilient impression of the world? Anything that can get us closer to that place of confidence and serenity in the face of change is invaluable. As we move away from traditional skill sets and management roles and consider what the future of work holds for us, I'll leave you with this quote from the writer Anne Hamilton. Not knowing is not ignorance. Fear springs from ignorance. Not knowing is a permissive and rigorous willingness to trust, leaving knowing in suspension. Trusting possibility without results, regarding as possible all manner of response. So thank you. And yeah, at this point, I'd really like to open it up to, any questions, conversation you might have.
We welcome people to also speak up, write them in the chat. We will continue for our next 5 minutes. So take your time and ask your questions to Stanzi.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, can I speak?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I found the indeterminacy method a little bit difficult to conceptualize, but the way I can relate it to is that I used to be a musician.
Mm-hmm.
And when my instructor was teaching me,
Yeah.
I did something wrong when he says you're playing out of key, so just keep practicing and learn your piece. Well, eventually what happened was that as I built my solo techniques, I reached a point where I could play a piece and I could decide to play off key purposely
Mm-hmm.
and then move into key anytime I wanted in any part of the piece.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone's listening to me and they're not a musician, they don't know what I'm doing, so they think I'm doing something wrong. But actually, we unbalanced the harmony in the piece purposely. And then when I moved back into key, then everything seems to be okay. So this was something that I learned through solo playing. And it was something that I used to build my technical skills on guitar. So in that sense, I do understand it. And I've used the same technique when I wanted to improve my physical conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
Where I put myself in an extremely uncomfortable position to see how I feel. Sometimes I would try and also use a mental trick, like try and solve a difficult mathematical problem while I'm on a treadmill or something else, and it feels extremely uncomfortable. But when I run on the treadmill by myself, it becomes so easy. It's incredible.
Right.
So those are some of the things that I think have helped me relate to what you were saying.
Well, I think those are two excellent examples of this kind of method and this way of thinking in the practice and conditioning modes, and the way the mind and the body sort of disconnect, go their separate ways and come back together in how you were practicing. The agility to play off key intentionally is something you have to train for. It's easy to be off key and wrong unintentionally, but to do it purposefully is exercising your agency as a musician and as an artist. So thank you for those two thoughts. Those are great examples.
Thank you very much for your talk.
Thank you. We also have a quick question here from Kevin Parasiti. How different is the method to mindfulness?
So mindfulness is a component in all of this. I mean, this is really what is specific about this is the experience you're getting interacting with very specific niches. You're getting to really zoom in and learn a specific discipline or a specific expertise, but then and get into the details and the nuances of it, and then come back out of that and move between and cross train between these very different frameworks. So mindfulness is something that emerges out of a practice like this.
So I'll ask the next question from Britt, but feel free to speak up. Always prefer when the participants ask their own question. But Britt, so this seems to be a form of organizational and personal plasticity. So that was more of a comment. But I got Jill here. What is a daily practice of indeterminacy?
What is a daily practice of indeterminacy? Well, I guess you could take that in a variety of different directions. I mean, within the context of the seminar and the programs that I run, it's spending an hour or 2 sessions with, you know, one of these individuals and one of the many other individuals I work with, and learning from their method, and then coming out of that, and then the following week interacting and working with another individual from a very different method, and then, you know, kind of doing that every week. And through that process, you cultivate this mindset of indeterminacy, and this you engage with this method of unbalancing to rebalance yourself. I think in daily life, moments where you see the applicability of work like this is just in everything. It's really in those micro moments when you confront a situation and you have that moment where you realize that you have more options than you think you do. And that sounds really easy, kind of like as easy as the breath example that we had earlier of, oh, it sounds easy to take a breath the right way. But it's not so easy. It's very easy to get caught in your reflexes and your knee-jerk reactions. And it's very, very hard to truly exercise a sense of choice in the instant when you need it. And it's to learn how to practice arriving at that moment is just, it requires this kind of mental agility that's more of a long-term engagement with a diversity of thinking and mindsets and practices. And we really don't often do this. We don't zoom into the details of these niche, different cultural, creative, entrepreneurial, organizational methods, and then zoom back out and connect them together. We often will stay in a niche or be focused in a specific domain and use that as the metaphor or the method for understanding larger principles. But what we really need to do is to be moving between and immersing ourselves in many more frameworks, that many of which in the moment we may not understand and may just be confusing to us. And that feeling of confusion is also valuable information.
And thank you everyone for pitching in now. So we have a maximum of 5 minutes, and I really want to make sure to have Carolina and Max answer their questions. So I'm going to share with you how to reach Stanzi after the session with her indeterminacyfestival.com. But yeah, ask away, Carolina, if you want, and then I'll go with Max. Or I can read your question if you want, Carolina. Let me just go here. Which are the steps or stages to follow this methodology?
Well, step one, the steps really are to engage with, you know, in the way that I train and work with people. It's really a longer term engagement of, you know, there's kind of two ways that you can go. One way is, you know, you have to put yourself and put what you know in a situation that is foreign to you. And you have to be able to test whether or not in a foreign situation, when you take your expertise or what you know or your knowledge base into something that feels foreign and outside of your framework, do you have the ability to respond quickly? So do you have those reflexes to adapt? So an example would be, I work I worked with a choreographer, and she had created a whole dance in the dance studio with with a group of 30 dancers. And I had created a set design for her that was a maze. It was so the whole space was wrapped with all this chiffon. So she walks into the environment and she says, how am I supposed to stage my performance here? There's all these obstructions. So but in that moment, she had the first moment where she said, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. But then she said, okay, I got to get to work, And so then she immediately started working with her team to start rethinking the whole score for this new environment. So this example, applies to all domains. You have to figure out for yourself, for what you do, for your expertise, for your the conditions of your life, where are the weak points? What are the weak points I can't imagine for the way I'm framing something, and how do I destabilize myself? The same way Alana, the choreographer we heard from, she's talking about she's created a set of conditions where she's holding these poles and she's having to like keep them horizontal at the same time, but everything is she's sort of thinking about how to destabilize her sense of balance as a trained dancer. And so in all of our trainings, no matter what our profession or our discipline or wherever we are in our lives, we have to stress test ourselves. And that's easier said than done, but it's definitely important, and it's definitely possible. And we need to do it more often.
Thank you, Max. Thank you, Carolina, for the great question. And Max, you have a big 1 or 2 minutes.
Yeah. I'll be very quick. Stanzi, thank you very much. It's a very complex subject. Just to try to make sure that I understood, if we would like to coin the concept of indeterminacy, would be
I think he froze. Max, you're cutting out a little bit.
In lateral thinking, in the day-to-day strains of life. Is that somewhere? Pardon?
You could turn off your video.
So, I don't know where it stopped, but basically, I'm trying to understand it. Pardon?
I'll stop your video. I think it's gonna, if you stop your video, it's gonna be less lagging. You have a great question there.
And you hear me better?
Yeah.
All right. So if I understand correctly, Stanzi, it's kind of like training the mind to apply lateral thinking within the flow zone on our everyday encounters of obstacles. Is that correct? Am I on the right track?
Yeah, you're definitely on the right track.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. And
do you have
I guess I'll contact you outside. If you guys can share her contact info, I'd love to just finish off this. I don't want to take anybody's else time. So Nayo, if you put out her contact, I'll add you on LinkedIn or something, and I'll ask you and finish what I was trying to say, Stanzi.
Okay, here's her LinkedIn info also. Hey, thank you everyone for joining us, but most importantly, thank you, Stanzi, for talking about this complex and thought-provoking subject here, the Indeterminacy Method. We would love to hear more about it, and the recording is there for you to watch again and again. And like I said, I shared her contact links, our contact links. If you have any question or you want to continue the conversation afterwards, we have to stop it now. But again, thank you so much, Stanzi, for this fantastic session. It was something. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining and for the questions.